started with some power and bring an Army Ranger on stage. So Zach Thomas.
All right, Mom, great. Wow. What an amazing opportunity just to be standing before people from all over the world and just talking about lean. I'm so honored to be able to be with you today, and I get a little extra time.
Yeah, you get extra time because it doesn't want to work.
Get it going here. So, thank you, Paul, Angel, Rick, and everyone else that helped put this together. This is absolutely an amazing opportunity. For me, I'm just honored to be here. So my name is Zach Thomas. I'm the owner, operator, and franchisee of Chick-fil-A in Rockmart, Georgia. Rockmart, Georgia is about an hour northwest of Atlanta. And so this is my family. I have 7 children. My wife and I met when I was 15 and she was 13. We've been married for almost 20 years, and we have 7 children, 5 girls, 2 boys from 14 to 4 months. People often ask me, do you know what causes that? And my answer is yes, and I like it. That's part of the problem. Or I sometimes respond is, no. Is it maybe in the chicken? So that's my family. My leadership journey started at the United States Military Academy at West Point. I was commissioned as an infantry officer in 1999. And I decided, if you'd have asked me when I was 20 years old, was I going to be selling chicken for a living, I would have told you you were crazy. I never thought that's something that I would be doing. However, things change over time. And my plan was, at the time, my plan was to be a general in the Army. That's what I wanted to do. So I set out to do the hardest thing possible. I went to United States Army Ranger School, became an airborne ranger, and not for the weak or faint-hearted, as the sign says. But everything was great. Life was great until September 11th, 2001. Most of you remember that day, and you remember exactly where you were in that moment. And I'll tell you, I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting at my breakfast table, eating a bowl of Cheerios, watching Fox News, listening to a report on the first trade center being hit. And I literally saw the second plane hit the tower, and I thought in that moment, my life is about to change. A few seconds later, the phone rang, and I had to go to work. Now, I will tell you, I'd been recently promoted to captain, and I had orders to go back down to Fort Benning to the captain's career course. And so I wanted to stay, and I begged my battalion commander, hey, sir, can I stay? And he said, Zach, you can't put your career on hold. You've been promoted to captain, you got to go to the captain's career course. And so, needless to say, I did not get to stay, but I wanted to go with my unit to Afghanistan or Iraq. And the way I explain it to folks that may not understand that is, it's like, you play football your whole life, and your team goes to the Super Bowl, you want to go with them. It's not that you just want to go kill people. And so, for me, I wanted to do that, but I did not get to go. And instead, I got assigned to the United States Army Ranger School as an instructor. And over time, I thought, my goal of becoming a general in the Army, I need to have combat experience and be proven infantry, ranger, leader. And I just began to question, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And so I decided to pursue something different. I decided to apply for the chaplain candidate program and become a chaplain in the Army. And my goal, because I was already a ranger, was to go into the 75th Ranger Regiment and be a regimental chaplain. And that was my goal. However, during the program, I was working at a church as a college and singles pastor, and because churches don't pay a lot of money, I needed some extra income, and so I started my own business. I started a coffee company called Ranger Coffee Company. I was literally on an airplane one day. We're getting ready to go into a night operation training mission, and for those of you that have ever jumped out of an airplane and you get suited up with a parachute, it's not convenient to have to use the bathroom, right? And so I drank a lot of coffee that day, and needless to say, I had to pee really bad. And in that moment, I just had this idea, if I could get more caffeine in 1 cup of coffee, I wouldn't have to pee as much. So, that was the inception of Ranger Coffee Company. I created a hybrid caffeinated blend of coffee. We ended up in Newsweek magazine, on Good Morning America, and my wife and I were staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning shipping coffee all over the world. And everything was great until 2007 when the stock market crashed. and people stopped buying expensive coffee, and then we were like, what are we going to do? And so I started looking for another opportunity. I ran across a Chick-fil-A opportunity. I read Truett Cathy's book, and I was like, man, I would love to work for this company. And so I applied in December of 2007. I got selected very quickly after that in April of 2008, and I became the franchisee of an existing restaurant in Marietta, Georgia. And everything was going great. At least I thought so. Until one day I was walking back from Starbucks. I had a coaching session with one of my leaders, and this car hit me. Now, I was walking across the street, and out of nowhere, this car, about 30 miles an hour, hits me, and I had a customer that was coming out of the restaurant, and he said when he looked up, he saw me. I was about 20 feet up in the air, and I came down and I landed head first on the windshield, and then I was projected about 50 feet forward, and I hit the curb. So I had 3 impacts. Now, miraculously, I only spent 24 hours in the hospital. No broken bones, but I had a lot of glass in my back and my head, and I had a concussion. I didn't even know I was a Chick-fil-A operator there for a little while. In fact, when I was in the hospital, my brain would reboot about every 10 minutes, and I'll never forget, a nurse walked in, and my wife was pregnant at the time with my son, and of course, every 10 minutes, I didn't know that, and so she said something, oh, you're pregnant, how far along are you? And I was like, you're pregnant? She said, yes, Zach, for the 50th time. And I said, well, is it mine? And I got a little trouble for that. By the grace of God, I only spent a little bit of time in the hospital, but I spent a lot of time. I couldn't do anything except sit on the couch, right? My wife would have to call a babysitter, next door neighbor, to come over and watch me while she went to go to school to go pick up the kids. And I spent a lot of time sitting around thinking about life and how I was leading people and impacting people's lives. So that's when I started writing. And so I wrote a book called Leader Farming. I'll talk more about it in just a second. But this is a visual image of my leadership style. So as an airborne ranger, here I am over here on this side, and I was a command and control style leader. It was like my job was to put the fear of God in people. I felt like it was a really good day if I made someone cry for their mother that day, right? And then I become a chaplain candidate, and I swung the pendulum all the way over to the other side, and I became this passive leader. And I just adopted this philosophy that if you just love everybody enough, they'll do the right thing. And so unfortunately, I was kind of in this mode over here when I got hit by the car. And I spent a lot of time out of the restaurant and not around my team. And during that time, I got taken advantage of pretty significantly. And so then I came back to the restaurant. When I came back in the restaurant, I kind of knee-jerk reacted, and I swung the pendulum all the way back over to the other side. And I became this tyrant. But then I was like, I don't want to be that guy. So then I swung the pendulum back to this side, and then it was like back and forth all the time. And I'll never forget, I overheard one of my team members say, I wonder which Zach we're going to get today. And I thought, man, I don't want to be that guy. And so I developed this philosophy that I call freedom leading. And I found a balance in the middle. And I don't have time to get into all that today. But we've been able to accomplish some pretty amazing results. I'll give you some statistics. Last year alone, there were 77,000 applications to become Chick-fil-A franchisees. Of those 77,000 applications, there were 50 new franchisees selected. Now, in my operator team, I have 6 other operators, 6 other franchisees. I'm the least tenured. I have less than 10 years. At the time, I had less than 10 years of experience. And of those operators, only one has produced one franchisee. I've produced 4, and a 5th one was just got selected for the leadership development program a couple days ago. So I've made my life about developing leaders. I say all the time, some farmers grow corn, some grow potatoes. I grow leaders. That's what I do. I believe that this model works really well with this next generation. The millennials and centennials will be the most difficult generation to manage, no matter what we do. The reality is that if you don't help them create meaningful work, they will not stay. If you don't help them add value to their lives and fully engage them, they will quit. So here's the thing. Whether you realize it or not, we're at a tipping point. I've done a lot of research on this. And the reality is that in 2020, boomers are retiring at a rate of 3.6 million per year. And millennials and centennials are entering the workforce, millions per year. And in the year 2020, the number of millennials and centennials will exceed boomers and Xers combined in the workforce. And so while we've changed, the workforce has changed, the way that we lead them has not. And so I believe it's very important that we think about that today. And I think lean and the respect for people is a huge component of that. Here's why it matters. Back then it was all about you choose the employee, right? Like, I'm going to choose you. Now, they actually choose you. They decide whether they want to work for you. Back then it was, what's my return on investment for hiring this person? Now it's like, what is my return on life? Why would I want to work for you? Back then it was all about a paycheck. Now it's about my personal brand. Do I want your company on my resume? And then, it was climb the corporate ladder, right? Now, I just create my own ladder. You're competing not just with the employer down the street, but you're competing with an ideal that you could become a YouTube millionaire or work for companies like Uber and Lyft and Amazon with flexible employment. And so you've got to think about those things. We have to embrace turnover because the game has actually changed. I was literally driving down the road one day and I was thinking about baseball. And I was thinking about minor league coaches and what their role is as a coach. In Atlanta, we have the Atlanta Braves, which are doing really well this year. I was at the game when they won the National League East. And so we have a local team very close by, the Rome Braves and the Gwinnett Braves, and these are farm teams. During my research, Branch Rickey, who was a legendary baseball coach who integrated baseball by bringing in Jackie Robinson, he also created what they call the farm team system. Back in the day, it was like the major league players were saying, they're growing players in those small towns down on the farm like corn. And that's where the colloquial term comes from, the farm team. And so, I was just thinking about this, and if you were a minor league baseball coach, your goal, you have to win games, right? But at the same time, if you think you're going to get to keep your players, you're disillusioned. You're absolutely disillusioned. You cannot keep, same thing with high school and college sports. If you think you're going to keep your players for more than 4 years, you're absolutely disillusioned. But yet, we still see phenomenal programs and winning teams that perform at high levels and high performance organizations. Same thing with the military. I never spent more than 2 years in one assignment, ever. But yet the military, our United States military, is a high performing organization. So, the irony of this whole thing is that when you actually embrace turnover, people actually want to stay longer. When they're not being guilted and forced and manipulated, any other form of manipulation to try to stay, and you're not just trying to do things to keep them, they actually feel the freedom to say, you know what, I think I want to stay here because these people are investing in me and helping me become the best version of themselves. So why don't we embrace turnover in business? I mean, here's an example of one guy, Jeff Goodman, former president and CEO of Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt. He said, I'm going to change the mission statement of my company. I want to be America's best first job. Literally change the mission statement of the company. And so this is a phenomenal company. Jeff's no longer the president, but this company literally changed their mission statement just to reflect what they were trying to do. So you may say, what does this have to do with lean? Well, obviously we talked a lot about respect for people. You heard Angel say this from the stage yesterday. And a continuous improvement culture. So here's a little bit about what we're doing in Chick-fil-A. Whether you know this or not, Chick-fil-A, most people that have experienced Chick-fil-A, you probably think we're an incredibly lean organization. The reality is, as a corporation, we do not embrace lean. There are very few lean practitioners in Chick-fil-A brand. And so my question, with my background of being a systems engineering at West Point and everything, it's like, I want to create superheroes or systems and processes. And I felt like I had to choose between the two until I met this guy right here, sitting on the front row, Jeff Stryker. I call him the godfather of lean at Chick-fil-A. And I went and visited him. My business consultant heard how I was kind of thinking, said, you need to go visit this guy. And so I spent some time with Jeff, and he challenged my thinking. And he said, Zach, you're thinking about superheroes. We want to create superheroes. We want to develop operators. We want to develop franchisees. But then the reality is, when these people leave, everything goes with them. So we want to create systems and processes as well. And so I was able to think about this after my conversations with Jeff. It's like, I want to have systems and processes with superheroes. And when you put those two things together, then you've got the best of both worlds. So he challenged me to think that way. That's where my lean journey began. It was systems first, people always. In the military, we had this saying, it was mission first, people always. And this right here, this statement could summarize my lean journey. But then, I was sitting at my mother-in-law's house on her 63rd birthday, and right before she blew out her candles, I had this idea. It was Lean Six Ninja, just popped in my head. Don't ask me why. But as an entrepreneur, I just had these random thoughts. And so I was like, I can use this to help create a culture, not just focused on systems and processes, but help create a culture of continuous improvement in my organization. I told my son to go put on his pajamas the other day, and he comes back with his ninja gear on as well. Like, the reality is, I've never met a single person that doesn't want to be a ninja. Like, you want to be a ninja, right? Like, absolutely. So, so we've created this culture, code of discipline. We call it the Ninja Code of Discipline. Everything has a place. Everything has a perfect standard. Everything has a continuously improving process or system. If it doesn't, make a place, define a standard, create a system or process, and continuously improvement. Ninja skills, identifying waste. If you find your head shaking like a ninja bobblehead, then you've probably got something that needs to be fixed or some waste that we can cut. We want to make lean fun. We dress up the cow in a ninja suit. We got ninja bread cookies at Christmas, and we got my team members, my leaders, posing like Karate Kid after they complete an improvement in the business. Lean videos and Kaizen Cash. We use this as a reward system for our team. They get to redeem this for a free meal anytime, and then we throw it in a pot and draw it at the end of the month for $100. And then finally, we give tours. This has been the number one thing that we've used to create engagement with our team. They get to show off their improvements. All this has led to us being the co-creators of what we call Lean 365, which is a culture-creating program that Chick-fil-A, with some work with folks at the home office, we've worked together to create this and help restaurants across the country and now across the world to create a culture of continuous improvement in their organization. We're on the Lean Operator panel, and we get to share feedback and help develop this. So the reality is our brand is growing at an unprecedented pace. Many restaurants are barely surviving on a superhero system. It's just a matter of time before the wheels fall off the wagon. And so our goal, Jeff, Hugo, and I, as pioneers of Lean and Chick-fil-A, is to help others create a culture of empowerment, engagement, and excellence through Lean. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Zach.